Morning, everyone, and happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. I wanted to read to you again from another one of my books. This one is Gorge Justice, and this is a story about a family who moves to a new location. The setting of the book is the Columbia River Gorge between Oregon and Washington. This is a mill economy at the time this book was written. And the passage I'm going to read is about an accident in one of the mills that helps the young lady who's the center of this story kind of get the confidence of the townspeople where she lives. Now, this family and this young lady are moving away from their former state to get away from kind of a dark past, which eventually catches up with them. Here's a passage about the mill accident. Sawmill work could be a dangerous occupation depending on a person's experience level and where in the mill they were assigned. For the most part, people worked in specific areas based on their particular skills and time in those areas. But there were times when someone in one area was needed to fill in at a spot when the person filling that role was out sick or had a doctor's appointment or a family emergency. One day, just after the turn of the new year, Sam Trueblood found a note on his time card when he reported for work at the mill in Home Valley. Instead of operating the trim saw, he was to report to what was commonly called the double saw. His usual station was like a huge bandsaw that trimmed the rounded edges off logs to prepare them to be cut into boards. The double saw was the next station, designed to cut the trimmed logs, now resembling long boxes, into 8-foot lengths where they would rip cut into boards. The double saw operator's position was standing in a round, waist-high, steel-sided pit. Conveyor belts on each side fed the square logs along until they hit a marker that designated 8 feet from the mark to the 15-foot diameter circular saw that swung down to cut the logs. The conveyors and saws were controlled manually by the operator using 3 buttons, set on each side of the pit in direct alignment with the saws. 2 were for conveyors, 1 for forward and 1 for reverse. The other was for the saw. The pit was only slightly larger than a 55-gallon drum, so the operator worked in a tight environment. An experienced operator could move the double lines of logs along at a pretty good pace with hardly a hesitation, even if a conveyor or saw jammed because of debris from the logs. It was a matter of watching with peripheral vision to watch both markers and stop the conveyors at the right time, then hitting the saw button for the cut. Sam had operated the double saw a number of times, but since it was not his normal station, he was a bit slower than the regular operator. It slowed production, but it was something mill foreman had to accept from time to time. But the pressure to step it up was always there. This particular day, Sam was keeping things moving at a pretty good pace. But after about 2 hours, the right side conveyor jammed because of a large splinter that had split off the front end of a log as he hit the button to move it forward. About the size of a baseball bat, the splinter was jammed in pretty tight. So tight that reversing and moving the conveyor forward a couple of times did not clear it. Sam had to clear it manually. In a case like this, mill rules stated the operator should exit the pit and, standing on the small platform in front of it, putting him at a distance from the saw, pull the debris out. But because the splinter was within reach from the pit and, knowing the stated procedure would stop production all along the line for a few minutes, he believed he could clear it from within the pit. He reached out and grabbed the end of the splinter that jammed out toward him. He pulled as hard as he could. but it did not budge. He pulled twice more with no success. He decided to try something else before exiting the pit. Sam braced himself to pull the splinter, then nudged the forward conveyor button with his hip. The conveyor lurched forward, and the splinter caught in the belt teeth, jerked forward, yanking Sam's arm with it. The motion pulled him forward, so he couldn't hit the conveyor button again with his hip to stop it. It also made him release the splinter with his right hand, but his glove on the left hand was caught on a jutting, jagged knot. Sam braced his right hand on the pit rim and jerked his arm back, and his hand came away from the splinter. But the sudden release threw him back and to the right, and his hip hit the saw button, sending it swinging down. In that split second, Sam knew his flailing right arm would come within the arc of the saw, but because of the speed of the saw, he felt no pain as it tore into his right wrist, slicing it nearly diagonally across the joint. Several workers in the area saw Sam's efforts, and his jerking body at the splinter and saw did its work. They shut down their equipment, one sounding the alarm that signaled for all machinery to come to a halt by way of the master switch in the shop foreman's platform, and rushed to the double saw station. They found Sam half crouched in the pit with his right arm flopped on the side and his left hanging at his other side. Widening pools of blood were under each. His co-workers quickly tied tourniquets above each wrist with their belts. They saw his right hand, still in its glove, was nearly severed, hanging on by only a few inches of skin, small muscles, and tendons. His left hand was missing the outer 3 fingers, just past the knuckles in the hand itself. A worker found his glove lying on the small platform with the fingers still inside, with a long, thin tendon extending about the length of his forearm. Now, you can get a copy of Gorge Justice and my 3 other books on my website at www.rustythewriter.org. It's a great story, and I think you really enjoy it. It has some twists and turns and a special twist at the end. Thank you for watching.